Wait, what are they talking about at Facebook?
Oh, privacy. It's all about privacy these days.
All about privacy.
Yeah. Zuckerberg is Mr. Privacy.
Don't you pronounce it privacy?
Something like that, if you're English.
And we're live.
Hey, everybody. We are actually reshooting this episode. We apologize for everybody who watched our Game of Thrones version. There were complaints about it being all black and not being able to see the full nerd in the Game of Thrones version. I mean,
is that what people are complaining about? I saw these articles and I didn't quite understand.
Well, yeah, no, because nobody could see it. It's like, whoa, that's some incredible special effects, and I don't know. It really is. It was really clever, I think. Like, oh, there's so much. We spent $10 million in the visual effects for this that you can't see because it was like, look at that. He's wearing a black armor with a black sword fighting a black zombie.
Was it that bad?
Dark in the dark side of the moon. Yes, that was just like, it was pretty bad.
All right, we've got
I do like how people were complaining because they're blaming their cable provider for the compression of it.
I mean, it's so easy to pile up on whatever,
company?
Xfinity or Cox or whoever you have.
It shows you the weakness of the squeezed down bandwidth you're getting.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
Yeah, so we are going to do this with the lights on. I thought it would have been fun if we did it with the lights off, but it's too hard to turn it off.
I could.
I turned my light off.
Would it work? Would it actually work?
Of course it would work. Yeah, because when you get the it'll be like footlights. You get the light from the screens.
We're going to go full Game of Thrones on you because there's too much Brad. Yeah, I guess you can still see Brad.
Brad's the only one here.
And here, by the way, Ryzen 3000 first benchmarks. Oh wait, no, I'm lying. Oh my God, see, I'm lying. See, that's the way to do it.
It's like the shadowy forces in the background.
That'd be funny.
Yep.
I was like, "What's going on here?" They're looking off. I mean, it was like, wow, that really builds drama for maybe a couple seconds. It felt like Doom. Remember Doom?
Mm-hmm.
Dune or Doom?
Doom or the movie? Or
no, the remake. Was it Doom?
Oh,
it was the one where it was like,
yeah, right.
Where you begged where they had the flashlight mods.
Yeah. Well, the cool thing was
Doom
like,
3. Doom 3.
I was like, well, can I maybe get some duct tape and tape the flashlight to the rifle? No. Put the flashlight away. Now shoot in dark. That was just
it's too difficult to fly.
Yeah, everybody's done that.
That's scary.
The dark thing.
We got all the friends of the shows here. Fernando, Chuck,
cool.
Vignesh, Patrick, Game Bacardi. Yeah.
Is that actually the same as Bacardi and rum?
I have no idea.
Bacardi, you mean the rum? Yeah.
Is it? I mean, Bacardi.
I'm not a drinker,
so whatever's free.
Also got Cy over on Facebook.
Hey, Cy.
Yeah, we got everybody. And while you do the intro, I forgot I need to bring in those.
Oh, those slides?
Those slides. So.
I think, we could probably just go with, if you want to have
fine.
the other one for
I've got time.
I put in the other one. There's two of them.
There's two slides. Usually you send me like 10, so that's an improvement.
Just two. They're just charts to show it, because it's just so much to keep track of here.
All right. Wait, I only see one. There.
Sorry,
okay.
It's in the other one.
Okay.
All
right, cool.
Sorry, everybody.
Yeah, looks like everything's rolling.
In Game of Thrones mode, like a DAS keyboard with like nothing on the DAS. Nobody knows what I'm talking about.
Nobody. I just laugh politely.
They made a keyboard. Yeah, politely. There was a key. Remember that company that made keyboards where all the keys were just black? Like there's no.
Oh, I know what DAS keyboard is. DAS keyboards are awesome.
Oh yeah.
In the dark, DAS keyboard. Yes, Game of Thrones.
Okay, let's do it.
All right. Hey, we're gonna be talking about, just to let you know before we do it, 1650, 19 Coffee Lake refresh Ryzen stuff, 3000.
We're doing both mobile and desktop. Right?
Oh, right. I forgot. I didn't even look at the desktop stuff.
Yeah.
I didn't even. Great. You can talk about that. I really did not pay attention to the mobile stuff.
These guys were on vacation last week. They're just
yeah. We are. I am out of it. Although I will talk. We are going to talk about something I thought was very interesting from the press briefing. I think we can talk about that because that was a public briefing. Sure. I'll bring that up later. That's you want to. That's some. I don't think anybody in the media has talked about that, but I think we should talk about that.
Right.
Ooh, what a teaser!
I know, right? Dang.
I know. I need more coffee now. Sorry.
All right, and I have the charts in. Yeah. So why don't we give it a go?
Ready?
Whenever you're ready.
In this episode of The Full Nerd, GeForce GTX 1650, 9th Gen Intel Coffee Lake refresh, and Ryzen 3000 leaks. Still leaking.
Still leaking. I like it.
I don't know if I believe it. We'll see.
We can hope. Coffee text would be.
Welcome to The Full Nerd, episode 92. I'm your host, Gordon Mong, with co-host Brad Charkis.
Hello.
Mark Hawkman joins us today.
I guess.
And, of course, Adam Patrick Murray, controlling the vertical and the horizontal.
Mark, what is your take on Star Trek The Motion Picture?
Oh, God.
Are we going down that road? No.
I haven't even gotten to that part because I'm going to get angry. Well, and actually, I want to hear. You've asked it now. You've opened that door.
Yeah,
What my take is?
To the seal. You've opened that 8th seal. Not even the 7th seal. There's like one more.
I don't know if I even remember Star Trek.
We're at 7th seal. We survived that. Let's open the next one, too.
Yeah.
You never seen it?
I'm a Star Wars fan.
Okay.
That's fair.
Star Trek
Good man.
was... Yeah.
Good man.
Yeah.
That's very good political response.
I mean, a lot of it kind of...
I don't know about that.
I really don't remember
I'm
anything
a Star
too much about
Trek.
it.
I'm a Star Wars fan. I will say, no, come on. Motion picture was so bad, it almost killed Star Trek. I mean, you're talking about like 79 episodes of minted money. Motion picture was so bad. Ghostbusters 2.
Minted money that they
this.
canceled?
Look, Ghostbusters 2 almost killed Ghostbusters. They couldn't make Ghostbusters for like 2 decades, right?
Really?
Men in Black 2 was so bad. Men in Black 3 didn't come out for like 15 years, right? They are just so lucky that like motion picture did not wipe out like all of Star Trek.
Have you seen the trailer for the new Men in Black? Because they're rebooting it.
Yeah, the one that released without music. That was sort of...
I don't know. Yeah.
No, but it actually looked... I thought
Yeah,
it
yeah.
looked pretty good.
You know,
I'm into it.
I'm not. It just seems the same old thing. It just I'm
it
not
is,
really nothing really to like.
Yeah.
But,
Well, we have people in the chat who say that Star Trek The Motion Picture was a great movie. That was DBNX. And Halstein Jenkins says you had to be into the original series to enjoy the first motion picture. And I agree.
I was into the original series.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a Star Trek nerd, and oh my god,
Vignesh says Star Trek Motion Picture wasn't that bad. Yeah. So
Yeah.
It's a lot
true.
better than Star Wars Episode 1.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about
Special
that.
effects, maybe.
Yeah, that's how beloved Star Wars was. Episode 1 did not kill it.
Yeah.
I was listening to this podcast this morning, a sports podcast. I was thinking, are they going to talk about the Warriors and some sports, actual stuff? Or are they going to talk about their vacations? We're talking about the vacations right now, folks.
Also, we had somebody in the chat mention, who was it? Patrick said you did it in one take. The intro is impressive.
That's because I'm tired. I think.
Good job.
You need to go on vacation more often.
I know.
Yes, we're refreshed.
While you were on vacation, Brad and Gordon, we had some graphics cards hit, huh?
Yeah.
Sure did.
Yeah.
That's actually what I was rushing to write up until the last minute before I left on vacation.
So you did or didn't do a formal review?
I did not do a formal review
And
of
why?
the GeForce GTX 1650. A card that came out last Tuesday. It's $150 or $149 according to NVIDIA. 75-watt card. Theoretically could be powered by your motherboard. The reason I didn't do a formal review is because NVIDIA took the unusual step of not providing early release press drivers, which the way that graphics card review works, we get the cards early. NVIDIA or AMD sends early release press drivers over so we can actually, test and benchmark the cards. NVIDIA did not do that with the GTX 1650. They said it was because they were releasing public drivers the same day that this card came out, because that same day they added a bunch of new G-Sync compatible monitors. They added the GTX 1660 Ti and 1650 for laptops. They were saying, we're just going to do one driver for the public that day. I suspect it's probably because actually in reviews that have come out over the past week, I was on vacation. I have not had a chance to test it myself yet, but people like Gamers Nexus, Steve over at Hardware Unbox, Chris Angelini at Tom's Hardware reviewed it. And the Radeon RX 570, which is a 2-year-old card, and is itself based on the RX 470, which is a year older than that, so a 3-year-old GPU. beats up on the GTX 1650 for $20 cheaper.
Ouch.
So
Yeah, we got a lot of people in the chat who seem to be kind of angry at Nvidia, saying that this is a BS release.
I wouldn't call it a BS release. I do think that if you already have a gaming PC, or if you're a hardcore gamer, you're going to want to go for the Radeon RX 570 over this. You can get 4 gigabyte versions starting at $130. You can get custom models or 8 gigabyte versions at the same $150 that the GTX 1650 costs. But that extra power takes extra power. The Radeon RX 570 requires a power connector.
Yep.
The basic versions of the GTX 1650 does not. So if you just have a big box PC or an old office PC, sitting around your home, you can buy one of these and slip it in, and boom, it's a gaming PC. NVIDIA's actually had a ton of success with the GTX 1050 Ti, and before that, the 750 Ti is incredibly popular for that very reason. It can just go into any existing computers, doesn't cost a lot of money. So I don't think it's a wasted release. I don't think it's necessarily a bad release. I think it's clear that they prioritize the 75-watt nature of it over flat out beating the Radeon RX 570.
So it just opens up a wider path for upgrades. Really, there are a lot of office throwaway, sandy bridge boxes that got thrown out that easily you drop one of these in and you get,
good stuff.
What kind of gaming performance can you expect out of it, though? This 1650.
It seems all right. I think you'd be able to get, medium with some high settings. Looking at some of the reviews I've seen, getting pretty decent frame rates. No,
1080 medium.
Yeah, that's what I would expect to shoot for at this. Looking at some of the other reviews I've seen, like I said, Gamers Nexus has a great one. Hardware Unboxed, Tom's Hardware. So yeah,
no
RTX.
RTX.
If you already have a gaming PC, no RTX. Another thing that's interesting that wasn't immediately clear, because I wrote this up last Friday before I went on vacation. I didn't have the reviewer's guide. I'm not sure if it was made clear in the reviewer's guide. But the GTX 1650 actually uses the older Volta encoder. Oh, I'm just back from vacation. The older Volta encoder for video processing instead of the newer Turing one. So if you were looking to use this as drop in a dedicated streaming GPU in a PC, it uses an older, less efficient video encoder too. So it's kind of a weird release.
That's really odd. But it's actually a Turing core.
Yeah, it's Turing core. It has all the new, the 2 different pipelines split out. It doesn't have RTX, as Mark mentioned. It has 4 gigabytes of memory, so that's a big plus, because the previously NVIDIA had released the GTX 1063 gigabyte, and the 3 gigabyte killed it. The 1050, the previous one, had 2 gigabytes memory, which that's not really usable for 1080p gaming these days. So it's good that it has 4 gigabytes of memory. But unless you're looking to slip it into a PC that's not already a gaming PC, you should probably go for the Radeon card.
Well, that's my question too. So how many PCs out there are going to be just retrofitted with these things? It seems like most people that buy that are trying to build a gaming PC will build a gaming PC, and they don't really necessarily have a whole lot of pre-built hardware sort of lying around this would fit into. Or am I wrong?
I think it goes into what Brad was saying, that it's, somebody like IT departments, they take these things, they throw them in the e-waste bin.
Yeah, I guess
you
so.
grab a couple, you bring them home, you give them to friends, they go out and buy a 1650, something that doesn't require power. But
if you go and you look in the Steam survey,
Yeah.
the 750 Ti and the 1050 are actually more prevalent than you would expect. So I'm not sure if it has to do with cost. I'm not sure if it has to do with the 75 watts. But NVIDIA knew. The Radeon RX 570 has been out for 2 years.
Yeah.
NVIDIA knew this card wouldn't beat it. To me, that means they're clearly prioritizing the 75 watt nature of it. So they feel it's important, would be my guess.
Yeah, and I imagine there's a segment that they're not going to know what a RX 570 or whatever.
No,
is. They just kind of it's the kind of buyer that's going to go to their box store and buy a box or whatever for a cost. They're not going to think what's faster. They're not going to even research it. Probably they're just going to although even a lot of business boxes, my POS work box here has It actually has a 6-pin connector.
Yeah.
So it's pretty rare to get even a
It's a quick and dirty upgrade, that's for sure.
but it is, yeah, it's handy. Huh. It's kind of
I
like,
think-
kind of an
I do
add
think it's
part.
kind of a bummer. I'm kind of miffed at NVIDIA for not releasing drivers for these beforehand. I mean, that should always be a red flag that NVIDIA's like, hey, we're not doing reviews of these. You can't. You can get the cards from your partners, from the board partners. They said, go ask EVGA, go ask Asus, go ask whoever. But they wouldn't give you the drivers until launch day. So I'm always a big fan of transparency when we're talking about buying, pricey hardware. And $150 might be cheap to some people, but to a lot of people, that's, a summer worth of mowing grass.
Yeah.
So I don't like NVIDIA not making day one reviews available. I think people like Steve at Hardware and Box and other Steve at Gamers Nexus deserve a lot of credit because they had reviews up within 24 hours of this card coming out so that people were able to realize what they were and weren't getting. I also will not be surprised if there's a GTX 1650 Ti released at some point because there's a massive gap between the $150 that this is, 75 watts, and the $220 GTX 1660. And there's a big gap in CUDA cores there too. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a GTX 1650 Ti come out at some point, and it's a lot more competitive because that card won't have to worry about sticking the 75 watts. So
Could they do the TI without the power connector?
I mean, they could, but I don't think they would with this card existing like this. Again, I haven't reviewed any cards yet, but I'd be awful skeptical about the idea of buying some of the overclocked aftermarket versions of this card because those tend to require the extra power connector. So if you're going to buy a card that needs a power connector anyway, I would, based off the reviews I've read, recommend the Radeon.
Yeah, that's what Vior said. He said most of the reviewers had 6-pin versions.
Interesting.
Even though they were pushing the whole 75-watt thing. So,
Well, the thing is, NVIDIA was pushing the 75-watt thing because that's, the key to NVIDIA.
Yeah, selling.
But for board partners like EVGA and Asus, they hate, or Asus, I just use those, just random, Zotac, MSI, Gigabyte, all of them. They hate losing in benchmark comparisons, so they will pretty much always send you the most expensive, powerful version of a card that you can test. So I'm not surprised to see all these 6-pin reviews, even though the lack of a 6-pin power connector is this card's true selling point.
That kind of says something about, I don't know if the hardware community just can't wrap their brains around that because that is a really strong point to not require a power connector is a big selling point. But
Yeah.
all the board vendors know if they get beat up against a 570, they're not going to send it out. So then it pushes people to buy these cards that they really shouldn't be buying anyway. It's really weird.
It's funny because it's like the opposite to me. Like they sent out these cards with these power connectors, and they get whomped by the Radeon RX 570. It's like, well, they both have power connectors. This card's just getting whomped. But if you had sent one out that doesn't require the power connector, be like, oh, it's a little bit behind, but you can just slip it right in. So I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. So how does it stack up against a 1050? Because I always thought the 1050 was pretty underpowered at this point. It's been underpowered for a while.
It should be a pretty. If you have the option to get this or 1050, get this. It looks like a pretty decent jump ahead. I didn't test it myself. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but I think it's like 30%, just like it has been some of the other ones. Some of the other GTX newer iterations. So, it's a decent upgrade. I mean, it's been a few years since the 1050 came out. So this is, keeping up with the Joneses or whatever.
Yeah. 150. That's right on the cusp of the next bump up is $200, you think?
Yeah.
To a 1660? The 1660's out, yeah. That's
220 1660, yep. It depends actually on what you got because you can find Radeon RX 580s awfully cheap these days. Like you can find a RX 580 overclocked, customized, all the fans, blinged out RGB on sale for like $170 or $180. I mean, it is going to be a little bit slower than a $220 to $250 GTX 1660, but you're saving $50+. So,
well, there's actually a lot of really good choices then.
Yeah. there are.
Although it is amazing to think that an RX 580, which is a 480 from 2014 or 2015. I mean, that's an ancient card at this point. It's still like
something like that. Yeah,
it's still seeing service, but at that low end, I guess it makes sense.
Yep.
1080p gaming. Huh. Okay. Which sounds like, yeah.
Nice.
If you got a junky old box worth a shot.
Yeah.
Or if you're building a cheap new box and you don't want to spend a lot of money on a fancy power supply, you want to get the Gordon Special, the case with the integrated power supply.
Even with the Gordon Special power, like who knows how much
Gordon
power it puts
Special.
out? You get a 6-pin power connector. You can run a 580 or a 570, I'm
That's
sure.
true.
It will be interesting to see if this is a niche or this is something they try to push in the future, but it seems nichey for right now, I guess.
Yeah,
right?
but you know that Brad's right.
Yeah.
They've done this for a long time because those 750s, they're like just tiny. It looked like a Pentium 3, right? It was just like it looked like literally a Pentium 3. The cooler was like this big. You could put them in any POS box in the world, and you'd have real graphics. And it wasn't a bad part. It was actually like I thought there are a lot of people like they can't afford a new power supply, or they can't afford a new machine, and a lot of those old machines get tossed out. So.
Something that's kind of, auxiliary to this, not directly related to the 1650, is the day that these came out, there was a driver, obviously, that came out to support this, along with some new games like World War Z and whatnot. And a lot of people were reporting that it was like eating up like weird amounts of CPU usage, like taking 10 or 20% of your CPU usage. NVIDIA just released a hotfix for that yesterday evening. So if you have the latest NVIDIA drivers and you've been noticing that's eating your CPU, go download that hotfix.
Well, that's a bummer.
That is.
Good PSA there, Brad.
Yeah. Boom. Man of the people.
Yeah.
You know what else came out while you guys were on vacation?
What?
Or not came out, but got announced?
I didn't read the internet much while I was on vacation.
Oh,
I
okay.
had no
probably good.
internet
Yeah.
on vacation.
Yeah,
there
you're
was none.
You're down in the bowels of the earth.
Yeah, well, Mark was able to write up about
It
it.
was a busy week for Intel. Yeah. So Intel announced a couple of, they announced desktop Core i9s and mobile Core i9s. And, I think for one thing, it's nice to be able to talk about finally ninth generation products as opposed to just living in the 8th generation for the last 5 years. I'm not really sure exactly if they really just delineated what makes a 9th generation part versus an 8th generation part as far as but
Oh wait, actually, I got a memo while you were
you got a
talking.
memo, yeah?
The difference between a 8th gen Intel part and a Intel 9th gen part is 1. So it's one more generation.
Well, there we go. Actually, it's +1. That makes it easy. So we had six new 9th gen Mobile H series core processors announced last week. Copy Lake refresh. So briefly, it's 9980HK, which is 2.4 gigahertz base, 5 gigahertz turbo, 8 cores, 16 threads, all the way down to the 9300H, which is 2.4 gigahertz, 4.1 turbo with 4 cores and 8 threads. We didn't have prices because they're, of course, being shipped to notebook vendors, at least at that time. It's interesting. We also had, Intel's announcement of their earnings last week, too. And I think it's kind of worth talking about just in the same context because of the fact that Intel really is doing quite well in the notebook space. It's doing less well in the desktop space. But, we're going to talk a little bit about the desktop stuff in a second. But, here, 9980HK, unlocked part, hyper-threading. Hyper-threading. The company's doing extremely well in notebooks. I think that really they're firing on all cylinders here. It certainly seems like it. You've got support for... H10 Optane memory, Wi-Fi 6, 128 gigs of DDR4. I thought this was a fairly impressive launch.
Yeah, and actually, I broke it down. I sat down. I haven't run the story yet, but it's going to be running very soon. I broke down the difference between the 8th and 9th gen parts.
Are these the slides you're talking about?
Yeah, there's actually one we could show, the one that just shows the difference, 9th gen versus 8th gen versus
Which one is that?
2. It's the shorter one. There's only 2.
Oh, okay. Then
stacks.
here it goes on your screen right now.
There we go. So this is very interesting.
Yeah, just looking at your shoulder.
First, I want to talk about 8th gen parts. They were awesome, which is crazy because in the bottom of the chart you're seeing here, you can see that across the board, you got really big boost clocks.
Mm-hmm.
Like the 8750H, which is, I felt like that was in like 90% of gaming laptops versus the 7700HQ.
Mm-hmm.
7700HQ was a decent part when it came out, but the 8750H just kicked its butt.
Damn.
27% higher, turbo boost clocks. And you got 2 more cores, 4 more threads.
Yep.
It was just just up and down, everywhere Intel basically gave you just all kinds. The 8th gen parts just knocked it out of the ballpark. 9th gen parts, i5 Core i7 is like, it's sort of like back to what we got before, where you got 10% like KB to Sky, whatever. You got 8, 9%, whatever. And then i5 is like, look at that. You get nothing, actually, interestingly. So 8th and 9th gen i5 parts, the 9300H versus 8300, it's like 100 megahertz. But, I understand because Intel's like, well,
4%.
You didn't pay for it anyway.
Right.
So the big difference, of course, is up on top, where you're getting a crap load more clocks.
You are.
And 2 more cores, 8 cores.
Right.
Those Core i9, these Core i9s are actually real Core i9s, whereas the previous Core i9 was, we give you decently better turbos.
Yeah.
If for a little short while, but for the most part, it's like everybody said, get the 8850H or the 8750H.
Remember,
They were still 6 cores, right?
They were all
The
6
Core-
cores.
Right.
All those
Yeah.
all those 8th gen parts were. But the Core i9s are just awesomeness.
they are. Yeah.
I mean, I think just based on what I've seen.
It'll be interesting to see what the effect of that thermal velocity boost is, because that's how you get that 5.0 gigahertz turbo. Because that's that weird thing where you have sort of the turbo boost plus this sort of opportunistic boost, whatever that means. I guess it has to do with
Opportunistically, you're living in Alaska.
Yeah, so I mean, exactly. If you have the proper cooling, then it'll boost up there, but it's not sure how long that is. So
I live in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
You'll probably get it.
Close.
And the one thing I do want to point out is I think a lot of people get scared by the base clock differences. You're gonna get the hater saying, "Well, look,
Yeah,
we're looking at you lose
What's wrong
the
with
9880H versus the 8950HK.
Yeah.
2 more cores, but that base clock is 600 megahertz lower, 26% lower clocks on the base. I don't think that's as big a deal because I know a lot of people freak out over Intel base clocks, but I rarely ever saw any Intel 8th gen part ever hit base clock. Base clock is like you're in Death Valley, it's 120 degrees outside, and you've got the AC on and the stereos and all the lights on. Yeah, it's going to fall back. But most of the time in most laptops, if they built it right, it's never going to get down to base clock.
Right, yeah.
It rarely ever does. So I think that is sort of in there, sort of like, this is how bad it could get, but generally...
If the workload's there, then the clock's up.
Yeah, it's going to generally be higher clocks, and if you are looking at a workload that is only 6 threads on a previous 8th gen Core i9, well, you've basically got 2 idle cores on the new 8 core part. So I think it all is going to come out in the wash in the end. So
Yeah,
I don't
they
think
do.
that's a big deal.
Yeah, I don't. Now, should we go to the desktop?
Yes,
Now, the desktop's a little bit more interesting, isn't it?
it is.
Is the other slide?
No.
No. Oh.
All right. So previously, we've had Intel announce the previous sort of their top of the line X series core chips, and now we've had sort of the more mainstream stuff. And the key here is that the majority of these things do not include hyperthreading. Now, all of a sudden, it's fine for notebooks, but it's not fine for desktops. I'm not sure exactly why that is, but we've got everything from the Core i9 9900, which does have hyperthreading, 3.1 gigahertz up to 5 gigahertz again, 8 cores, 16 threads, but the majority is all 8 cores, 8 threads, from the Core i7 9700 down to the Core i3 9100F. You've got these products here without integrated graphics, like the 9600, the 9500F, and then you go down to the more interesting, I think, the T series parts. And Intel announced 7 of those, and the T series are just simply 35 watt parts. But I think those are, just from that
For all-in-ones.
Yeah, from all-in-ones, from a nice power standpoint. But again, only one product is actually hyperthreaded. That's the Core i9 9900T. I don't know why you'd want a Core i9 9900T all in one, but that's okay.
Well, I can tell you that
Yeah.
the T parts and a lot of those other 9th gen parts, they're opportunistic.
I suppose. Yeah.
They do. It's called opportunistic. Consumer sees 9th gen Intel part right on their $400 Costco box.
But again, lots of 8 core, 8 threads, 9700T, 6 core, 6 threads, the Core i5s, the 9500T all the way down. And then, of course, you've got, if you want to buy them, the Pentium Golds, which back to hyperthreading, they actually have them again. And then you go down to the Celerons, which are basically, I always associate that with the Surface Go. that's just basically a Surface Go product or something of that sort. These are products you probably wouldn't buy if you're
so if you want hyperthreading, you have to buy a Pentium or you have to buy a Core i9.
Yeah, right. You just really it's a premium. It's all of a sudden hyperthreading is a premium feature now again, and I would love to see some benchmarks comparing 8-core 16-thread parts and 8-core 8-thread parts and all sorts of. I mean, there's just the company that invented hyperthreading now has decided that hyperthreading is now just a premium feature. I mean, 4 years ago they had the Haswell E product. It was an Extreme Edition processor, 8 cores, 16 threads, charged a buttload of money for it, and everyone suddenly was like, yes, hyperthreading. And now it's just like, what? They don't care. There's not a whole lot of explanation for it.
The desktop parts, I will point, this is the part I was teasing earlier. I was on the briefing for these parts, the mobile parts and the desktop parts. And it was mobile. And like, hey, we got some desktop parts too.
Exactly.
And it was crazy because
just kind of threw them out there.
It's like, here it goes. Click, click, click. Okay, any questions? Hey,
right.
wait. We didn't see can you go back to those? Oh, no, we'll send them to you later.
Yeah. Just to be more specific, there were like 4 slides of processor speeds and feeds, and they went through them in about, 15 seconds, if that?
No, it was, so luckily I was taking a screen grab of it.
Yeah.
For another thing, and I often I don't know what it's like. I take pictures, right? I'll take 15 anyway.
Yeah, right.
And I was hitting the print screen button, and the pictures were literally went slide 1, slide 2, slide 3, and then later on I was like, "Hey, Mark, you need a copy of those slides?" He's like, "No, I got it." I say, "Yeah, there's 3 of them, right?"
Yeah,
and you're like, "What? There's only one." And everybody was like, "What? Can you show those?" So I didn't see that. I didn't catch those desktop parts. Oh, any questions about our mobile parts?
It was smart PR. Nobody asked about hyperthreading. Everyone just wanted the speeds and feeds.
No, I mean, I got to say, I mean, because I didn't pay too close attention to those desktop parts because I knew they didn't. Just like the NVIDIA launch day drivers, there were none, right?
Right.
They didn't want to talk about it when things are not looking good. You don't like, hey, let's concentrate on this one PowerPoint slide so you can see how. But this to me seems really odd considering that where AMD is and where AMD
that's exactly
coming.
Right. Yeah,
like it's almost like these parts are almost launched like in a vacuum of like I don't know, like it's 2014 or something like that.
Isn't that usually how they do it though?
No,
is that they kind of ignore what AMD's doing
I'm
and
not
just
really
stay
sure.
the course?
In this case, you can't ignore what AMD is doing. I mean, AMD is going to be touting those cores like crazy. I mean, they're just going to be they're going to be banging that drum like crazy.
I'm sure more cores have been in their roadmap forever, but I think if Ryzen didn't come along, we wouldn't have 6-core i5s and 8-core Core i7.
No, that's true. You're right. Yep.
I just don't understand. It feels like this launch for the desktop parts, the mobile parts, I think are awesome because essentially AMD does not exist in mobile right now.
Right, exactly. I mean, we've seen more Snapdragon laptops in the lab than we have AMD.
That's not even kidding. That's not even made up. That's true.
Yeah.
I just these desktop parts are like. Do you not see, Intel can see that train coming down the track, right? But I don't even. Is it because they just got to launch something to get out there? And
I don't know. I mean, I suppose there's a number of different theories. I mean, we haven't even talked yet about the sort of this Tweakers roadmap leak that sort of came out last week too, where all of a sudden, there's a lot of 14 nanometer parts on the roadmap as opposed to just a few 10 meter Ice Lake stuff that's. At least the roadmap showed it in limited quantities. So
you want to talk about that, Mark? Because I'm.
Yeah, that's fine. Well, let's just finish up this thing first. We can segue to that. But I mean, I guess the question is more the question is more in my mind more an experimental question because again, we always talk about are those games, are those applications sucking up the additional threads, and over time that's certainly true, but. Intel had the opportunity to make the case that said, hey, look, we have a number of mainstream applications and they're simply testing and taxing the main core, the single core. We think single core performance is more important. And that's why we're emphasizing the boost and the turbo and the sort of this opportunistic boost and so forth. They could have said that. They didn't say that, which leaves the door open for AMD to say, hey, look, cores of the future, more cores of the future. Let's run Cinebench against Intel's best and just blow it away. And that's going to be the headline from probably Computex, I imagine.
I agree. But, realistically, it is very hard to tell people this. But, I mean, and people don't accept it. 900K, it's an awesome part.
It is. Absolutely.
It's only got 8 cores, whatever, compared to but the thing runs at just stupidly high clocks all the time.
Sure.
Yeah, it's actually not that less expensive than say a 16-core Threadripper, But consumers don't need Threadripper. I love cores, but the average person does not need 16 cores, and they're not better served by getting 16 cores at a lower clock,
Right.
versus having, 8 cores at 5 gigahertz.
I find it interesting how, and kind of, yes, interesting is a good word, how they seem to be, both Intel and AMD, going in two different directions
really
and
are.
open up more processor choice.
right, yep.
Like Mark was saying, Intel's doubling down on, we're still charging what we were. We're getting rid of hyper-threading. But those 8 cores that you get are going to be the 8 best freaking high-speed cores that you're going to get.
Yep.
Whereas AMD's, we'll give you 8 cores. It'll be a little bit slower, but they'll hyper-thread, so you actually get 16 threads or whatever. And it sounds like possibly even more than that with Ryzen 3rd Gen. So it's just going to be, I like the idea of choice. But Intel's doing interesting things with this lineup.
No,
I think a lot of it has to do with not wanting to cannibalize Xeon parts.
No, there's a real stratification going on. I mean, we've always had power, price, and performance as being the sort of the 3 Ps. And then power has been, sort of Qualcomm's push. And I think sort of the 1-watt panels is diminishing that a little bit and so forth. But yeah, I mean, in the performance space, we've traditionally associated that with simply just clock speeds. And now we're seeing clock speeds and cores. And really, we're also seeing, I would say, just an increased, dominance by Intel in the notebook space, but a real threat to Intel in the desktop space. I mean, if you look at Mercury Research's numbers, I mean, AMD has gained significant share in both desktop and mobile over the past, couple of quarters. And
But when you go from selling 0 notebooks
No,
to selling
I know,
10.
but I mean, yeah, it's like single digits to double digits, right? I mean, that's true. But I mean, and Intel certainly outsells them like, 4-1 or something of that sort.
Sure.
But I mean, really, that's, to get Brad's point, again, we're seeing a little bit more choice. And as you give momentum to AMD and get more momentum behind that platform, then they can continue to drive forward. I mean, AMD, it continues to be profitable, and profitable means, processor development. Now, again, they lost Keller to Intel. I mean, that's a big loss. But we'll talk a little bit more about the Ryzen stuff. Apparently, the Ryzen 3000 stuff looks decent. So.
But I mean, at the same time, Intel, like you said, they had earnings.
They had earnings.
Are they horrible?
They were not good.
Flat
Flat revenue, profits were okay, but their forecasts kind of is not great. Their revenue forecast.
But I'm just wondering, because I mean, it's been an awesome 2-year run for Ryzen so far.
Yeah.
Has that, Ryzen has mostly encroached into desktop.
Mm-hmm.
Their server success is still coming. Mobile is still non-existent for the most part. But has that hurt? Did that show up in the Intel previous numbers?
The interesting thing about their Intel numbers actually was that, Intel is supposedly pivoting away from the PC to become this data center company with Xeon. Xeon did not do well. The PC side of things, CCG, basically killed them up, and which is weird because that's not the way it's supposed to go, but it did go that way.
Oh, it always goes.
Yeah,
that
it always
way.
goes that way. Right?
It always goes that way.
So yeah, and yeah, that's true. Actually, Microsoft had earnings, and Windows was the strongest division as well.
Oh wait, Mark, are you saying the PC?
I know it's weird. Yep,
is going to do is not going to go away.
Yeah, PC is not going away.
I'm really sometimes just sick of these companies that are just always trying to get away from us, PC.
Yeah,
and then all their money is from it's like HP Enterprise and HP clients these days, right? Enterprise not so great.
Yeah,
actually, HP laptops awesomeness.
So, I mean, and then we can talk about a little bit about too. I mean, what Tweakers came out with.
Yeah. So what's up there?
I actually have the slide. Somebody pointed it out.
Nice,
Peter.
thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Peter.
Yep.
So I'm going to throw that up right now.
That's fine. Just interesting.
It's the Intel desktop client CPU planning roadmap.
Yeah.
Up to 2020.
Yeah, I'm actually having some problems loading that up. Basically, what it boils down to was the fact that we're seeing a lot of 14 nanometer parts through the most of next year. We're seeing Ice Lake appear. So first of all, Intel said also too that Ice Lake is on track. They're going to have more parts than they expected in the holiday season, whatever that means, if it's 3 to 4 or whatever it might be. You never know what that means, right? But they still, at least these roadmaps, which, I was told by people who had seen roadmaps that yes, they were pretty accurate, but I don't know if that means, if they were accurate up to date.
Which one's Ice Lake again, Mark?
Ice Lake is the 10 nanometer part.
Okay, 10
Yes,
nanometer.
right.
That's launched on schedule for this year, right?
Supposedly it's going to be out by the holiday season.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, if you look at this, like you can see, there's a lot of 14 nanometer stuff there, especially both and if you open the mobile one as well. But in the desktop, it's you're looking at Comet Lake, which is Coffee Lake and Comet Lake. Comet Lake supposedly is going to be, possibly expected Computex. I mean, with sort of shipping near the end of the year. But again, a lot very dry, I would say, desktop roadmap going forward. I mean, nothing that's
there's no actual lake with the lakes.
Nothing that really excites me too much. And in the mobile space, it's still a lot of 14 nanometer stuff as well. So I don't really know if people necessarily care whether it's 10 nanometer or 14 nanometer, but I mean, it does affect things like pricing, chips or core size and so forth. Thanks. Yeah, our in-house Wi-Fi sucks. But yes, I mean, oops. That's
XPS.
Yeah,
somebody
XPS.
at Dell got in trouble. This is
Yeah,
XPS
I know.
leaks.
Well, it's funny because I'm sure like everyone else, we have a couple of contacts on, sort of official and non-official, and I was complete struck out as far as getting in touch with anyone at Dell to comment, which leads me to believe that maybe the thing did actually come from Dell. So yeah, if you look at if we look at going forward again, we're seeing Comet Lake, we're seeing Cascade Lake, Coffee Lake.
And what are those? So
these are just new processors.
they're all 14s.
Yeah, they're all
basically.
14 nanometers. I mean, we're going out to 10 core Comet Lake S products near the sort of the end of the year, and you're getting into again sort of just that's a desktop stuff too. So
Yeah, still desktop. I did not find the
Sorry, I'll
actual.
bring up the mobile stuff.
But
I'm not surprised by all this.
Yeah.
One, I'm just going to point out again that when it comes to making paper bets, I predicted that there will be no volume shipments of desktop 10 nanometer parts this year.
Yeah, but that wasn't too hard. I did disagree with that.
If you look, Mark brings up a good point. It is insightful to pay attention to like financials and stuff like that, because during this whole 10 nanometer, the issues with getting it out, right? Intel has actually changed some plans around to make like 10 nanometer facilities that were supposed to be to do more 14 nanometer parts now.
That's right. Yep.
So, I mean, they have all these facilities set up to make 14 nanometer parts. 14 nanometer parts have been refined for, I don't even know how many pluses are behind them at this point. Plus.
Yeah.
So,
3.
I mean, they're pretty refined, and on the desktop at least, they're probably going to hit much higher speeds and give you more performance than I would expect the first iteration of 10 nanometer parts to do. So I'm not completely shocked to see that they're going to stick with it, at least for another year or two if these leaks are accurate.
Yeah, but we're really on the ragged edge of 14 nanometer at this point. I mean, we're just.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we keep saying they're running out of gas, but we're just seeing it.
I'm
being
mega
pushed along
bummed
the
that they called
road.
it Ice Lake, the 10 nanometer parts. I'm bummed that they called it that
What was that?
because I was real excited to get away from the lakes finally, because these lakes have been on the 14 nanometer parts.
Yeah, well, I can certainly understand that. I mean, it's I'm just trying to bring up the mobile CPU planning room right now.
I've got the mobile one here.
Oh, great, thank you. Yeah, so we're seeing Tiger Lake, we're seeing Rocket Lake. Rocket Lake U is the new one coming out supposedly next year.
Skyhawk Lake?
Skyhawk Lake, yeah, on the small.
Those are the 10 nanometer parts.
Not necessarily, no. Still a lot of 14 nanometer stuff. Yep. So we've got. Oh, here we go. So yeah, we've got Tiger Lake is four cores, 10 nanometers according to this leaked roadmap. You've got Comet Lake, which is 2 to 4 cores, also 14 nanometer. Rocket Lake's the interesting one because it's a 4-core/6 core part in 14 nanometer, but supposedly 10 nanometer graphics. So I guess the chiplet model. Coming out in Q3 of 2020. So that would be the XC, I guess, implementation. Sort of, an APU. I'm not sure.
Well, that's a U. It's a U part. These are all U. That's a U.
That's a U part.
Tiger Lake is a Y part, so low power.
Yeah, lower power. Yeah, so you've got the U series, the 15 and 28 watts. And then the top, still, you're seeing Coffee Lake, same stuff, and Comet Lake. 8-core/10 core, 14 nanometer, Q2 2020. So,
those H parts
lots
go up
of
to
stuff
10.
going on in the notebook space.
But all 14s.
Yep, a lot of it 14s. That's right.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, AMD is going to be moving along.
It'll be really interesting, right? I mean, they're still upping the core counts because right now we've got 4 cores in the U parts.
Yep.
You go up to 6. H goes from 8 to 10 supposedly.
Mm-hmm. I mean, process technology is a little bit of a marketing scheme too. I mean,
we all know
but still the numbers. Some of the numbers don't lie anyway.
No, yeah.
AMD is pushing ahead and Intel's struggling.
that is it. That's just like, ooh. If these are real, that
real.
does not look good.
Yeah, if these are real.
Right.
Yep. But I mean, there's been it's been a very choppy week for Intel. I mean, with the launch and the earnings and now this, I mean, it's going to be an interesting year.
Yeah. I kind of wonder when it seems like they got to get 10 nanometer out to save them at this point.
Yeah. I mean, at GDC, I was hearing some, you were probably wandering around too. I was hearing some Intel folks grumbling about like, things don't looking good in desktop, but
Yeah, I think I've said this for a while, but Intel doesn't care that much about desktop.
Probably not.
I mean, they
still.
do. They have a lot of pride. Believe me, there's a lot of pride at Intel. But you know what? If if there's one area you're going to lose between servers, laptops, and desktops, they can lose. I think Intel's thought is like, their perspective will be, we'll lose desktop now, but we'll see in 2 years. Right?
Yeah.
So, but there's hell no are they going to give up on laptops and servers. That's where the money is for them.
But Epic is also supposed. I mean, we don't talk about Epic, but Epic is actually doing fairly well too in the server space, and that's kind of in space as well.
And I agree, but I just think from the Intel's perspective, if someone gets pushed off the life raft first, it's going to be desktop. It always has been because it's just like you said, they don't want to be associated with a PC, and nothing says PC more than a desktop.
Yeah,
right?
Good point.
As the most thing.
Yeah, that's true.
And of course, the PC is always the thing that comes back to save everybody all the time.
That's true.
Everybody's superhero.
Yep.
And but the good news is Intel still has an advantage because AMD doesn't have clock speeds, right? Because Intel still has higher clock speeds.
Maybe.
Yep.
Maybe if AMD had a part that could run at higher clock speeds with improved IPC.
Like what?
That was clumsy, wasn't it?
Hey, it worked. I got the idea.
I tried there, folks.
That was a good one.
Yeah, the Ryzen 3000 performance leak, supposedly, right? Which, of course, I didn't bookmark the actual leak, supposedly. But earlier when I talked about it, audio listeners, I did air quotes because everybody's interpreting the leak of the Ryzen 3000 performance leaks based off of a site that's probably been machine translated, because I swear to God, ain't no tech websites paid somebody to speak Mandarin and then translate it to English. So we're all like, whatever Google told us. For all we know, it says Intel will have or AMD will have a new ice cream flavor next month, and it'll be Rocky Road. But somehow it turns into. I think it's very plausible, and what it is essentially, they're saying that the Ryzen 3000s. Or people playing, motherboard vendors playing with it, are saying the 4-core, 8-core variants are hitting 4.5 gigahertz,
right,
with a 15% or 18%? 15% IPC uplift over previous, Ryzen Zen Plus.
And they're anticipating 12 and 16 cores as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's pretty solid.
It is.
It's like, I guess that 7 nanometer stuff is real,
But the thing is they're talking, so how much of that is architectural and how much of that is process? Because when they're talking about IPC and they're talking about, when we know that some of their architectural people have left for Intel and they're still talking about IPC improvements, it makes me wonder a little bit if that's A, accurate, or B, where that's coming from.
Yeah, and I think it's also people are not. Everybody seems to have different interpretations of IPC. I've done IPC testing. My interpretation is different than other sites' testing. And, it's probably different from AMD and Intel's. But I think definitely some of it is from, they take some of it in. I think there's a mix-up. I have a hard time believing that they are really getting a solid, pure 15% IPC increase over Zen Plus.
Yeah.
Right. It feels like, 10 I can believe. 15 seems like, well, damn.
Yeah, that's my reaction too.
That is a major improvement.
Yep.
I think it's probably other things that are getting mixed up between. They're getting other pickups. It's not a pure IPC increase like clock for clock. I think there's other things going on too.
Yeah.
But let's face it, 4.5 gigahertz plus, decent IPC uplift, it's going to be a monster part. And everywhere from 4 to 16 cores in desktop.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
And let's not even talk about it, but
plus
these next parts are going to make it into laptops. Previous Ryzen parts, not quite ready for prime time, right? For laptops. This next gen part feels like it's there because you got 7 nanometer, power savings, all that stuff. Perfect for for laptops.
I mean, let's hope. I mean, I want to see some. I mean, we just haven't seen any AMD laptop reviews. I mean, there's just
It's pretty rough.
It is pretty rough. I mean, yeah, I want as much competition in the laptop space as we have in the desktop space, and so I mean, from that standpoint, because we have to we favor competition. Yeah, I mean, I have to say that I'm rooting for AMD here. So
of course, you want. Ultimately, it's about consumer choice.
Yeah, absolutely.
We want people to have choice.
Yep.
So, I just think it's AMD's year. I mean, the second half of this year and next year, AMD's gonna be rocking. It feels like, right?
Yeah, it does. I don't know what Brad feels like in the graphics space, but in the CPU space, it certainly does.
No idea what to expect in the graphics space yet.
Wait for Navi.
Right.
Wait for Navi. There's a lot of people in the chat.
I'm actually, before you do that, Adam, I'm actually the most intriguing thing to me in this leak is the fact that AMD X570 motherboards will have up to 40 PCIe lanes, and also that motherboard manufacturers are struggling to get B550 motherboards to work with PCIe 4. So that new cutting edge lanes might only be in the most expensive motherboards you can buy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, it makes sense too. Because I mean, it's not like you really need 40 lanes for a $400, $500 desktop PC, right?
So if a B550 board doesn't arrive with proper PCIe 4.0 support, what does that mean exactly? It just means that it won't work?
Well, I think what'll happen is, so the PCIe off of the CPU itself, because the PCIe controllers in the Ryzen part, that'll be PCIe Gen 4. So you probably get 16 to 20.
Sure.
And then you pipe some of that off for the South Bridge to the chipset and whatever's coming off of that. Maybe it'll be mixed. Some of the slots will be Gen 3, some will be, and then definitely for graphics and whatever else gets repurposed by the motherboard maker, some probably would be Gen 4. I would guess. That's my guess. I have a hard time believing that you're going to get 40 off the motherboard. Because I think that's, again, we are relying on leaks, not event that are being machine translated by Google.
Yep.
It's not a native language, but I'm going to guess because you're probably going to get 16 because it's a desktop part. You get 16 out of the CPU for the graphics card. You get another 4 for the M.2. That's kind of what's happened with X470 and all those other previous parts. That's 20 lanes, Gen 4. I'm not sure where you're going to get these other 20 lanes with Gen 4. It just doesn't. I mean, maybe some of
it seems enthusiastic.
It seems enthusiastic, especially for a desktop class part. It's not Threadripper where you need 128 PCIe lanes. So it's just not. Doesn't make any sense to me. Why even push that anyway? So I suspect that's really just a misinterpretation. So, although they've got a picture of it, but I'm not seeing.
Yeah, we'll see. Too far away.
Jet has a question for you, Gordon. Why are you so interested in PCIe 4 when we barely saturate the 3.0 bus with graphics and storage?
Good question.
Have you ever driven through LA at say 4:30 p.m. and you're sitting there? It's about 89, 95 degrees, and you're just like not moving, and you go like. We don't need to think about 10 lanes. We should just, we should wait until traffic turns into the gridlock of LA before we add lanes. The whole idea is to build lanes before you gridlock it. Yeah, we have not saturated. And people, for one thing, don't get overhyped about PCIe 4. It's not going to change your world. It's not going to make your graphics card suddenly 100% faster, folks. It's not going to make your SSD faster, but you have to build the lanes in before you get to the bottleneck. So you don't want to be like LA and wait till it's too late and then try to build it then, and you can't. So that's why I'm excited for it.
Good answer.
Yeah.
Boom.
And I sort of just take that exact same answer, go back 10 years, and that's like PCIe 2 to 4, right? Because like, oh my God, I got to have Gen 3. Really? I mean, I still run Sunny Bridge parts with Gen 2. It's not hurting me.
Yeah, there was a lot of people in the chat earlier talking about the IPC, back to the IPC discussion, that the cache is one place they can improve.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of places they can get it. I'm not sure. And I think one of the, again, machine translated by Google, they did say it was, might be in scientific side or something. So
yeah, branch prediction and so forth.
I mean, it's hard to say what exactly is, I mean, we're not computer scientists, for God's sake, and who knows? I mean,
Yeah.
It's gonna, no matter what. I'm not saying it's gonna be a lousy IPC increase. 15% seems really, really awesome. And hell, if they did it, I'd celebrate it. But I'm just saying, I do think it's a little optimistic. I think 10 is really good.
Yeah, still 10 is really
15
good.
is just like damn.
Yeah. Yep.
Do you think 10 is good enough to jump from a second gen, or is these would be like first gen people jumping up?
It depends on what you do. I mean, if you play games primarily and you run Office and Chrome, no.
Sure.
Buy a bigger SSD, more RAM, better graphics card. If you actually use something where you need 16 cores on your current Ryzen platform, yeah, why not, right? If we really do see 16 core, Ryzen drop-in replacements for current boards, yeah, why not? If you're really going to use it, yes. If you're not going to use it, no. If you just want to brag about it, yes. Because let's face it, like, I got 16 cores.
All right.
Yeah.
Nice.
So, yeah, definitely. Any other
Ryzen's coming out.
Any other controversial chatting up there? Anybody want to
No,
throw it in my face?
Most people don't like Star Trek 5. I think that's pretty. I'm just kidding. Do we want to go to Q&A? Because we have some stuff that's been built up the past couple weeks in Discord.
I got a question. Is Star Trek 5 worse than Star Trek Motion Picture?
What was Star Trek 5 again?
Shatner one.
Star Trek
Shatner
5
one.
is worse.
I will quote you the
way
classic
worse.
line, "What does God need with a starship?" Yes.
It was real bad.
I guess I can't remember. It must be
I'm
bad.
just saying I'm not sure which was worse.
I know which is worse. It's definitely 5. I don't think there's anybody who could defend 5. 5's pretty
Yeah, I
bad.
agree.
I would rather I don't know. I'd probably rather watch 5 and watch Shatner chew through the scenery than Star Motion Picture again. I was like, I've seen enough. I mean, you'd have to be on so much mind-altering substance to make that cloud fly-through sequence seem cool.
I'm gonna have to go watch Babylon 5 again just to get all this out of my brain.
There you go. Here we go. Let's get to some questions. You can always get to your question in our Discord. The full Nerd Discord links in the description. The first one's from Matthias.
Mr. Garvey.
Yeah. And the whoops. No. Wait. Uh-oh. Never mind. That was not a question. They did
More
not put a
comment.
question in there. Yep.
No,
all right.
it's not safe for work.
All right, no, it just wasn't a question. Wizbro. This one's from Wizbro. Would a 1650 even be worth upgrading to for somebody who has a 1050 Ti, or would something like an RX 580 or 1660 be a better upgrade? I think we kind of
That'd
already
be-
answered that.
That'd be a far better upgrade. If you have the power connector and you can have the room in your PC, jumping to a RX, even a 570 would be preferable to a 1650. A 580 or 1660 would be a huge upgrade.
It's like a side grade almost from a 1050 Ti to a 1650 part. It's almost like a side grade. It sounds like.
I mean, you'll get a little bit better, but I mean, if you're going to spend $150, I would mow a few more lawns and spend the $220 on 1660, because that would be a huge upgrade for you.
I don't know what's up with this, but it's not 1952. We're like, yay, Timmy, you want to mow my lawn? Oh yeah, thanks, Mr. Ung. Here's your $1.50, Timmy. You go buy yourself a Chevy with that. It's like, Timmy, you can charge me $100 to do my lawn? It is not cheap to have the kid mow your lawn anymore.
Nope. That's
I
why
have
you
2 acres, so.
Oh,
That's why you have kids.
so you have the right around mower then?
No, I'd pay somebody to do that. I tried it for the first year. I'm like, man, I ain't got 5 hours every week to do this.
Also humid there too.
Yeah.
Next one's from friend of the show, Rooker. Is there going to be a 1650 Ti? Yeah, probably. If so, do you think it'll have any more VRAM than the 1650 or just higher clocks? What do you expect?
I think it would have more CUDA cores, higher clocks, and you'll need a power connector. I don't think it would have more VRAM. I think the 6 gigs of VRAM is going to be reserved for the 1660 and 1660 Ti.
Okay. And then Sharp Thunder, what do you think of Intel still using 14 nanometer till 2020 roadmap leak and Windows 10 minimum storage requirements to 32 gigs?
That's what-
Previously, it was 16 gigs.
That's true. We haven't talked about that. I mean, again, I think it probably boils down to price. I mean, there's not really thermals and price are sort of the gating factors as far as the process technology is concerned. I mean, we'd have to see what, I mean, pricing is obviously sort of tied to manufacturing, but it's somewhat can be disconnected too. I mean, as you pointed out, I mean, Intel could decide whether they wanted, I mean, Intel can decide from a pricing standpoint whether they want to take a loss, well, not a loss, but reduce their margins on desktop or notebooks. I think we're thinking right now that on desktop, they'd be a little bit more willing to adjust pricing, I guess, than on notebooks and some of their higher margin products. I think it's a little bit more of an embarrassment from them, just because they've always been the proponent of Moore's Law. They've been the proponent of we own our own fabs, we can manufacture these things. So the fact that they can't actually make that transition is more of an embarrassment to them than an actual, more of an embarrassment to them than actually having an effect on the consumer. Now, the second aspect of it, the sort of 32 gigs of memory to Windows 10, what he was referring to is that there has been quietly, Microsoft has sort of upped the hardware requirements for Windows 10. So previously it was 60. It was because Windows 10 is sort of an ongoing service. They don't actually necessarily say, okay, the next iteration is going to have, Windows 11 is going to require something, and require such and such in terms of hardware. So there's been a sort of a quiet leak where it's been sort of up the requirements for the minimum requirements for Windows 10's May update have been upgraded. I don't necessarily know if that has any effect with Intel's roadmap. I think that, obviously over time, Windows requirements increase over time. I think this is sort of just the natural progression of such. Just make sure that you have the minimum hardware requirements.
I have a counter opinion.
Sure, go ahead.
I think it's BS.
No way.
I think it's because Microsoft, within the past few years, Microsoft and its partners have sold tablets and Chromebook competitors that only have 32 gigabytes of memory installed. So I think that leaving those people out in the cold is pretty messed up, especially because with this move to Windows 10 as a service, they've been real aggressive about cutting off support. If you're, however X many major releases back, it's not the 7 years that it used to be. It's like 2 years or whatever, like a 2-year-old version of Windows 10. Like if you haven't upgraded within 2 years, you're going to get cut off from security support and all that stuff. And so I think the fact, those two things combined, the fact that they were recently selling Chromebook competitors with only 32 gigabytes of memory, and the fact that they will kick you off support very quickly these days, it's going to leave some people out in the cold, and I don't like it. It was the same issue with Windows 8 had that issue. They would let people, get Windows 8 PCs or install Windows 8 on their PCs. And then Windows 8.1 made it so not necessarily a lot of people, but some people who were perfectly fine with Windows 8, they got rejected from Windows 8.1 because they didn't meet some obscure CPU, thing that was now required in Windows 8.1. Those people got, left off and they didn't get security support. And I don't like that, policy.
I think the counter argument to that is the fact that now we have, again, I totally agree with what you're saying. The counter argument to that, I think, is the fact that now with the May update, Microsoft is trying to reserve space within the operating system for its own updates. So in other words, previously it's been sort of this shared memory space, shared storage space, where your data sort of lives within the operating system, and then of course, if it wants to go ahead and kick an update to you, it has to sort of carve out an additional, gigabyte and a half for that. So what it's trying to do now is it's trying to say reserve, I think it's 7 gigabytes if I remember correctly, and that's sort of the space that it's going to use for both itself as far as the updates are concerned. Keep in mind too that some of these tablets do have, some don't, but some of these tablets do have sort of SD cards, room, and SD cards are so dirt cheap right now that adding capacity to a tablet or something of that sort makes a lot more sense than it did in the past. I mean, I don't know what the prices are, but
super
30,
cheap.
Yeah, $30 or $40 gets you a ton. So from that standpoint, I agree with you. I think that it's a little bit, there is a little bit of wiggle room there from a user standpoint.
I agree. I think it makes sense. I can understand why they do it. I just disagree with the decision, especially because, the reason that those 32 gigabyte Chromebook competitors came out is no doubt because of Microsoft, because HP and Dell and everybody were selling Chromebooks with that configuration already.
Sure.
It was Microsoft who said, hey, man, we need to do some Chromebook killers. So I don't know. I just don't like it.
Well, Chromebooks live on the web too. You don't need as much local
Yeah.
storage. Microsoft, it's you're a lot
Yeah,
more
different.
dependent upon it. You're a lot more dependent on that.
I know. We're not really sure whether the increasing of 32 gigs min storage is going to cut you off either, right? I get the impression that it's more for upgrade in place. All right.
Could be.
I mean, it's possible that you could do a clean install of Windows 10 May update to a 16 gig device and it'll work. Of course, most people who buy 16 gig stream books, those kind of devices, they're not going to even notice anyway.
Yeah.
So it's probably not. But I don't think it's necessarily them cutting them off. Like,
Yeah.
No, we're not going to install, right?
But I mean, we've seen a lot of notebooks that we've gotten in that we received in the lab. I mean, there was a time where 32 and 64 gigs of SSD storage was sort of what we got, and now we're seeing a lot more 128s, 256s, and above. And so I think that from that standpoint, the hardware capacity is actually outpacing the requirements that Microsoft's putting on the storage.
Yeah, and I know people and people like to bag on Microsoft. I do it myself, but they don't. They generally don't. They have this they don't leave people behind. They're not like some companies that just like throw people overboard just for fun of it, just to
Right.
see what happens. You could still install Windows 10 on Pentium 3, Pentium 4,
Yep.
right? Core 2, not a problem. Some companies will take Xeon,
Yeah.
parts and just like, you're out of here because we don't want to support you. We don't pay money.
I mean, the bigger question is going to be what
Apple.
happens at the end of the year when Windows 7 runs out of support and people are sort of forced to move to Windows 10 if they want to go ahead and listen to Microsoft on that score. I mean, that's the enterprise space is really dealing with that right now, and the consumer is going to have to deal with it. Some are going to have to deal with that as well to some extent.
But you almost wonder if it's for their own good. I
I
love
agree.
Windows 7.
I know.
I think it's a wonderful operating system. I wish sometimes Windows 10 was Windows 7, but it is something that is, it's like, I think it's older than my daughter right now at this point. So
I mean, not to get too political, but I think some of the reaction is the same as people that get upset that they're forced to pay for health insurance.
no, I mean, I understand it because
benefit,
people don't want to have to do it. At some point, you got to roll, you got to do the upgrade. And yeah, I can see your fixed income, you don't have the money, that's fine. But if you're talking about you're a 10,000 seat license enterprise customer and you don't
right.
want to move off Windows 7 because you're too lazy and too cheap to pay for it.
Totally different. Yep.
It's like, your workforce, you're degrading the capabilities of your workforce by forcing them to use technology from Windows 7 came out in, I don't know.
2008,
Yeah.
2008.
something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Right. Yeah. It's been a while.
No, I mean, you would not force your employees to use
Oh yeah, the enterprise. I mean, enterprises are a completely different story than the consumers. Consumers have to make that decision individually. Enterprises have a lot more budget to go ahead and make these decisions.
yeah, I mean, so
yes,
for
I agree with
those
that.
for those customers, it's like, look,
Yes.
you're getting all the goodness of
Right.
SSDs, all the amazing coolness of new laptops, convertibles, all that stuff. Just make the move, you cheap bastards. And you know what it is? Some CFO somewhere's like, oh, I don't want to pay
Yep.
for that.
We have the best.
You're hurting. They're hurting their workforce at that point.
Yeah.
The CEO should, in the C-suite, they should have a conversation. Look, these people hey, how come I talked to Billy in accounting? He's got this machine from 2008, Windows 7. How come he doesn't have the same brand new Ultrabook I do with the Whiskey Lake CPU and 10 hours or 12 hours of battery runtime?
Pretty sure our IT department doesn't allow us to upgrade from Windows 8. I still have my corporate
Exactly
notebook,
like
which
that.
is still on Windows 8, which doesn't allow me.
Perfect.
Yep.
Sorry, that really took us off.
No, that was fun. In the meantime, we did have a couple more questions come in. One from YouTube, Jeffrey Andrus. Will Intel ever catch up with TSMC and Samsung's fabs?
Ooh, that was a good question.
I don't know.
I don't either.
I mean, I you know what? 5 years ago, I would say, yeah, Intel is the world-class leader of fabs. They are they are like the masters of fabrication. Who could say that for certain anymore?
I don't know.
Who can say it? I mean, at this point, they have to go. They're in the hole. They got to prove they're in charge again.
Yeah, it used to be TSMC, UMC, and Chartered, and then the latter two I haven't heard much from them in ages, honestly. But TSMC is world class. I mean,
Yeah. No, I mean, and I think the thing is because I went to the briefer they had, where they're saying, hey, our 14 nanometer is as good
right.
as Samsung and so's 10 nanometer.
Mm-hmm.
Our 14 nanometer is damn near as good as their 10.
Global Foundries too also sold off a fab, I think, didn't they?
They backed off. They backed off and said they're not doing
They
cutting
don't want
edge
to play
stuff
anymore.
Right. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I wouldn't bet against Intel. I mean, I agree with you guys. Who knows? You never know the future. But I mean, right now we're seeing other foundries finally catch up to and surpass Intel.
Right.
Like Intel has been Chipzilla for a reason.
Yep.
So I'm not going to bet against that.
Yeah, the funny thing too is like these things always seem to happen to Intel. It's not just that they suddenly have a resurgent AMD, they have a resurgent, and TSMC has caught them. It's also that they're faltering.
Well,
Right at the same time, it's not even that like, hey, we got a horse race now. It's like you got a horse race that's got a sprained ankle or something. So
Intel also fights on several fronts. I mean, again, we've talked about like Qualcomm coming out and saying, all right, we have this ultra low power chip and we can allow you to have bad days of battery life. Intel simply says, okay, we're going to go ahead and develop 1 watt panels to give you that same battery life, but just not necessarily affect our own chips. I mean, you've got like Lakefield, you've got the chip stacking aspect of it. I mean, Intel can Intel can go ahead and compete in manufacturing too, but they can also compete in terms of other aspects of the design too.
Yeah.
And,
That's a good point.
And win there. So
there is a lot of magic to what Intel does. People don't know that. They don't honestly give them credit for it. I mean, most of the laptop advances have been pioneered by Intel.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
A lot of the desktop parts and technologies have been pioneered by Intel.
Sure.
And then they just simply, hey, let's stop here and rest
That's
for like
the role.
5 years.
Their engineering is designed to drive the PC market ahead as a whole, and they've been able to do that.
Do you think? I mean, I'm going to ask you, Mark. Do you think it was a mistake though? Because Qualcomm,
What was a mistake?
like the whole Atom misadventure, the whole we can't let Qualcomm rule modems. We can't let Qualcomm take over these. It's just like
Well, that's a completely separate topic, but yes, I mean they have tried and failed again in terms of communications. They've dating back as you know as well as I do, strong arm and so forth. I mean they just can't for some reason make that particular space work. They have simply I mean it's difficult to design a 5G modem. I mean Qualcomm's made that point explicitly, both in the market and in court. I think that Intel at some point in time is just going to have to accept that it's just not there and come up with some sort of alternative solution, especially in the sort of the mobile space.
Well, I guess my thought is like, why care? You play to your strength. Intel's strength is like kick-ass performance for years and years and years.
I
and years,
think Swan is, based upon their earnings call, I think Swan is heading in that direction. Because he basically said, look, we got rid of Wind River, we got rid of some other things. We want to focus on the things we do best. So, I don't think we're going to see as many keynotes with drones flying overhead at CES that we used to. So I think that's, from that standpoint, that's a smart decision. So maybe we'll see that.
It's funny because AMD just went through this. Remember,
Right.
AMD was like,
Absolutely.
you know what? Go ahead and play off in your x86 world. We're doing ARM parts. ARM is the future.
Exactly. They're gonna
You're
do
going to see
servers.
ARM servers. Basically they said, that didn't go. We're going to get back into performance desktops.
Yep.
Performance.
Lisa Su
And
instilled
look
discipline
where
in
we
the
are.
company, and they've done really well as a result.
So,
Yep.
okay.
Last question, and then we can wrap it up. Zorglub on Discord is asking, is an i7 8700K still a high-end CPU? I don't know if my gamer son has to go AMD.
No, keep that in your system and be happy with that.
You're going to say, no, it's not, Brad.
No.
8700K
That's
is
what
a
I have.
great
That's what I have in our GPU testing system to test, 2080 Ti's and whatnot. Like, you're happy with that.
That is an awesome, it's like, what?
I don't have an
Why?
answer.
That your kid's machine has a nicer CPU than most of us do. Yeah, it's a great part. I wouldn't. We're not to the point where you need 8 cores for gaming. I'm sorry, it's just not true in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
No. Awesome. Cool. Then let's wrap it up then.
All right, check back next week for your fix of PC Talk on the Full Nerd. For audio listeners, subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher. Also, we have a Discord channel. See notes somewhere. Tell you where to find it. Send questions and comments to thefullnerd@pcworld.com. And if you're at iTunes, because it makes Apple happy, please also leave reviews on iTunes. Every time you do, I don't know, something good happens somewhere.
Windows
They like
has a
that.
minimum storage requirement of 1 more gig.
Yeah, 1 more gig of Windows. Thanks for coming. I'm Gordon Ung with Brad Charkis,
Adios.
Mark Hockman,
Thanks.
and Patrick Murray's going to hit the off switch. And wait, if you hang out, you'll see the Game of Thrones mode right after the credits. It's really cool.
Special dark mode.
Yeah, maybe later. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
See, watch. Here comes Game of Thrones mode right now.